In today's video, I'm going to teach you how to use Filmic RGB in Darktable. Filmic RGB is a tone mapping module that takes the wide dynamic range of a raw photo and compresses it into a range your screen can display, while keeping detail in both shadows and highlights. It effectively replaces older base curve approaches and usually gives more natural contrast and color. Start by opening your photo in the darkroom view. We'll be working inside the Filmic RGB module. Find it in the list of processing modules. Depending on your layout, it's often grouped with tone mapping or exposure and contrast tools. If you don't see it right away, use the search box and type Filmic, then enable the module. Once it's active, you'll notice it presents a structured way to set the scene's dynamic range and then shape the final look. Begin in the Scene tab, where you define the input range. Think of black relative exposure and white relative exposure as the boundaries of your scene. What counts as pure black and what counts as pure white. If parts of your highlights look blown out, gently raise the white relative exposure until detail starts to return. If your shadows feel muddy or too deep, nudge the black relative exposure to decide how far into the shadows you want to go. This step is about mapping the real brightness range of the scene, so Filmic knows what to compress and how to protect important detail. Make small adjustments and watch the image as you go. If highlights start looking flat or shadows look crushed, you've likely pushed a boundary too far. Once the scene range feels correct, move to the Look tab to control contrast and midtones. The contrast slider shapes overall punch. Increase it for a bolder result or ease it back for a softer roll-off. Latitude decides how much of the dynamic range gets preserved before clipping occurs. A higher latitude keeps more tonal nuance and helps avoid harsh transitions, while a lower latitude can make the image snappier, but at the risk of losing subtle detail. Shadows, highlights. Balance shifts the midpoint of the curve, letting you bias the image a bit brighter or darker, without blowing highlights or drowning shadows. Adjust these three in tandem, watching skin tones, skies, and deep shadows for a natural feel. Take your time with subtle moves, zoom in to check critical areas, and aim for smooth highlight roll-offs and readable shadows. With Filmic RGB, the goal is realistic contrast that respects your scene's light, not forcing everything into the middle. And that's how to use Filmic RGB in Darktable.